Here we go. Welcome, everyone, to the Transform Your Relationships show. I'm Laura Rubinstein, here with Dr. Rhoberta Shaler. Hi, Rhoberta.
Hello, Laura. Great day. We're going to talk about resolving conflict, but with the additional piece of resolving conflict with ease. And so many people don't see those two words in the same sentence. So it'll be an interesting conversation today.
Oh, very much so. Before we jump right into that, I do have a question for you. And I want to let everyone know they can find more out about you, Dr. Rhoberta, at forrelationshiphelp.com, and more about me at transformtoday.com. That's my blog. And I know we have all kinds of resources there for you. We'll share with you as we go along even more, but I wanted to open up with, in case you have to run for some reason, you know how to get in touch with us. We can also put them in the chat for you. And thanks for being here. So my first question. Like you said, it said the resolving conflict and ease in the same sentence. Why is that possible? How is that possible?
Well, so many of us are not raised to know how to resolve conflict. And when we're children, conflict means fear, means a fearful issue. And that's a problem, just as my phone is a problem. So I will unplug it. We didn't learn that. I mean, when we're children, when there's an issue where we feel like, it's coming at me. And so there's no opportunity to learn how to resolve conflict in our young life. So that gets to be a scary thing. And then if we don't purposefully develop skills to learn how to manage conflict later on, we're still with that place like, oh, no, let's not have a conflict. And that can lead to things like, at the farthest end, it can lead to things like becoming passive aggressive because you don't want to have a conflict in the moment. So you agree to things and then lo and behold, you don't do them. And when someone says, why didn't you do them? And you say, well, what do you think? I'm going to just do that because you want me to? So
they turn it around on them.
Yeah. So we need to have conflict management skills, and we need not to be afraid of conflict. And that's a big thing to overcome.
Yeah. And a lot of people have a lot of resistance to conflict, so I find that if you don't go passive aggressive, you might go passive and build resentment.
Well, either way, you're going to build resentment, because if you're passive or passive aggressive, somebody else is doing it to you and you don't like it, even though you have to come to recognize that you're welcoming it yourself. And that's a big recognition.
Yeah. And then on the person who's the conflict on the other side, they get frustrated. So you've got this frustration, resentment play going on, and it's like, help, where is the relationship help doctor when you need her?
Yeah, I've worked in the field of conflict management now for a long time, 30 years. And now I work in a very specific part of it, but helping people at workplaces play nicely together and at home to play nicely together means that we have to learn to manage our conflicts. And it starts by managing our conflicts within ourselves. And
good point.
Yeah.
Say more.
Well, so many times we're very conflicted. Somebody asks us to do things, we feel put upon, then we feel like we should do it. And we have this whole mental gymnastics that goes on in that moment. And so it's an internal conflict. We're not clear about our values. We're not clear about what we will do, what we won't do. All of those things have to be managed within ourselves and then put skills on it. And then we can step in with some confidence and some competence. Because many people avoid conflict because they don't feel competent or capable of actually contributing to it and getting an outcome they want.
And a lot of people feel like, oh, I shouldn't have what I want, or it's not about me. I shouldn't be selfish. I have to think of other people first. It's that people pleaser in us that comes out, and I think it actually sabotages our ability to resolve conflict.
Well, absolutely. I mean, first and foremost, being a people pleaser is something that children learn to do, right? And the majority of children learn how to keep the giants happy. Like, if I don't keep them happy, I'm not going to survive. They innately know that. So that's their take on it. And then there they are as adults or as young adults, and they don't have that ability to do anything except, quote unquote, keep the giants happy. And in doing that, they not only don't have the skills, but they don't have the fortitude to step in. They don't believe that they deserve to step up and speak out and be able to explain what's going on within them. And that's the big tool that I want to share with everybody today, Laura. As you know, that there is a way to do it that can be really, really helpful.
Mm-hmm. Are you going to reveal that now, that tool? I love this tool.
Yeah, it's a great tool. Over these last 30 years of helping folks play nicely together at home and work, I developed something called the Personal Weather Report. And I outline it in 2 chapters in my book, Kaizen for Couples. And if people want to look at that book, it's KAIZEN for couples.com. And what the Personal Weather Report is based on is that I need to be able to tell you what's going on inside me. What is the weather report from inside me? So when I'm coming from that place, I'm an expert. I'm an authority. But we're not used to doing it. So many times I'll have clients, and I have clients all over the world, and I'll explain the Personal Weather Report, and they will say, oh, that's easy. And I'll say, great, give me one.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have this big silence, this, oh, I don't know what to say. So it's going to sound simple to you, but it's not necessarily easy until you practice it, like with most things. So to be able to speak with authority about what's going on with you, the Personal Weather Report has 4 parts. You say, here's what I'm thinking, here's what I'm feeling, here's what I'm needing, here's what I'm wanting. Okay, what I'm thinking, feeling, needing, and wanting. Except that there cannot be, I got to make myself a quick picture here. It's got to be no use of the word you.
Only I. Sounds very selfish, doesn't it? To
Because,
some.
well, what you're doing is you're getting away from blame. When you don't use the word you are not ascribing anything to the other person, and that's what makes it tricky to do. Because there's an old communication technique that people taught. I taught it a long time ago, don't teach it anymore, but called the I message, which sounds like, when you do this, I feel this way. Okay, right then and there, got problems. So I developed the Personal Weather Report to take care of that problem and to make it a more authentic process. So it might sound like this, you know, I think that offering this blab is a really good idea. I feel good when I do it. I want to have this reach more and more people, and I need feedback to know that it's happening. Now you're clear about what's going on within me. I didn't put anything on you. I didn't ask for anything. I just declared. And when you start to learn to do that in your relationships on a regular basis, you then become more authentic in the relationship because you know more about me. And now you can do something with it. So the 2nd chapter in the book is on how to respond to a Personal Weather Report. So first of all, you need to know how to give one, how to actually step up and just say what's going on for you. And in order to do that, you need the belief that you deserve to take up space and draw breath.
Yes, you have to know you're worthy and you have a right to your opinion, and more so than that, I, in the feminine power cards, and I was looking for the card, but I'm not finding it here, is a principle. that I call the people pleaser's cure. Aw, thank you. FemininePowerCards.com is where you can find these awesome cards. And what we were talking about here with the worthy is honoring your emotions. You know, they're messages from your soul that are precious. They're gifts. They're not to be denied or neglected or disowned, or tried to stuff down. When you honor them, you really are presencing something quite important, because they're messages, there's deep messages, there's reasons you're feeling this. But the people pleaser's cure is if you're honoring your emotions and you make decisions from the truth of them, you're making decisions that are really good for not only you, but for all concerned. Like if it's good for you, it's good for all concerned.
Yeah, I would put a little caveat there because some people have a misunderstood perception of anger. So they might think that it's good
I
for
mean,
me to express my anger and
oh,
get it all out, right?
yes, let's do address that, because that's not the intention of what that means.
No, I know it isn't, but just on the off chance that someone thinks that's permission,
Yeah.
it isn't permission. And, you know, what you're doing is telling somebody what's going on with you, but you are not spilling out aggressively over them or taking away what their participation in the interaction is. It is you standing in your truth, saying, as well as I know at this moment, here's what I'm thinking, feeling, needing, and wanting.
And this card says, speak the truth from love. And I like to rephrase that sometimes, that you can say anything to anyone when it comes from love. So if you're angry, you're not in a loving state.
Yeah, and exactly true. I teach anger management classes, and so many times people are under this impression that you have to get whatever off your chest. And therefore, the only way they know to do it is to create conflict, to do it in an angry, arrogant, aggressive way, because they don't have the skills to communicate and manage conflict, and they're not as evolved within themselves as to be able to hear what the other person's saying and to be able to express clearly what it is they want to say.
Mhm. I think the key a lot of times in conflict resolution is letting people be what they want. You can't have a demand for obedience in there. And
No, you can't.
criticism winds up being that, a demand for obedience. So if we can eliminate criticism, if we can eliminate, that judgmental part and say, this person has a right to be just as I do. I get to have my say, and they get to have their say. So a key skill is listening without being attached or triggered. Wow. How do you do that?
Well, that's a huge thing. And again, it comes down to having done your own individual work. You know, so many times I say this, Laura, but I'll say it again. Strong people get relationship help. The rest don't bother, and they just go through life fearful, and life doesn't offer them all that they need. So learning to listen to yourself is a good thing, to be able to sit in the silence and be with yourself, to find out what you really think about something, what you really want, what you need, what you feel. And I invite my clients to do that 6 times a day. We use a particular breathing technique, then they just ask themselves those 4 questions, and then they move on. But listening internally is important. And then being able to put yourself on hold, fully engaged to listen to the other person, where you're not jumping in with the yeah buts or trying to fix things that haven't been expressed yet. You are just listening and receptive. So very important. And in order to do that, you have to be wanting to be in relationship with that person, not trying to make your point, but to be collaborating with that person for greater understanding.
I have two things to add to that. Half of the conflict could be resolved just by listening. I learned that in my customer service days, being a manager of a large customer service center. If I let somebody speak their complaint 3 times or more,
Mm-hmm.
maybe 3 to 5 times, and then I ask them, what would make you happy? And I listen some more, even if I couldn't provide what they wanted, it was hugely acknowledging to them, and it softened the response, even if it wasn't exactly if what I could do for them, right?
Yeah.
Because we can't always give people exactly what they want, but we can certainly listen to them and listen to them again and listen to them again until sometimes they even work it out themselves.
Yeah, well, there are many people like myself, for instance. I'm an auditory processor. I don't know what I think until I speak it.
Mm.
So to be able to say to my partner, this is what's true about me. I need to talk things out. I need to just talk and I'll figure it out. Please just ask me questions and be there with me. That lets me know he's listening and he's honoring my process. So many of us do process that. About 10% of people, that's their primary way of processing information. So it is very important for somebody to talk it out, because not only do they get the emotion out of their system, but they clarify what they're actually doing. And by asking the questions that you ask, you're calling them to clarity, which helps.
Yeah, and it gives me a better sense. It allows me to calm down too. If I'm just listening and I'm just getting if I take my eyes off myself and I just start listening to what they're talking about, I can listen underneath that, especially if
Yeah.
I'm giving it time and space. And then I could even say, well, you know what? Let me go and think about that. If I don't have a response that feels good, that doesn't feel like it's coming from anger or doesn't feel like it's coming from love, like if it's coming from anger and not from love or fear, you say, I don't have clarity on this right now, but I heard everything you said. I might even repeat back to them what they said, and I'm going to think about it and come back to you.
Mm-hmm.
Or back to your other comment about you have to want to be in relationship with this person. There may be a choice at some point in listening to that person that you may choose, based upon what this person is saying, the nature of a relationship probably needs to change.
Yeah.
And it's okay. It's
Mm-hmm.
okay to acknowledge that to yourself. I mean, obviously, you may not have a big choice in certain circumstances, but the way you interact with that person, the closeness you have with that person could change.
Absolutely. And sometimes it should change. My new book is going live in the next 2 days. And I'll just say this in response to what you said, because you can go to hijackals.com. But there are people that I have trademarked the term hijackals for, whose whole way of being in the world is to hijack relationships for their own purposes while scavenging them for power, status, and control. So if you happen to think that you're with one of those people, I highly recommend you go to there and find out, because you don't want to be in a relationship that you don't understand, that you are never going to be allowed to be a full participant. You are always going to be told how it is and why. And so there's that, because there are toxic people in the world. And sometimes you recognize, as you're listening to what they want or what they need or what they're even feeling, is that there is no path for this relationship to move forward. And that conflict is not just conflict in the moment or a topic or a subject, it's actually the way we are in the world. And just a little note aside on that, not everybody has to leave a hijackal. What you have to do is recognize it and then learn strategically to work with it. So it's very important. And on the other hand, I would say this too. There's a switch that everybody has inside themselves, and you're perfectly capable of flipping it for yourself. And what that switch is if you have to have a particularly difficult conversation, at one end of how you could be in that conversation is the intent to learn and listen and be curious about your partner. And at the negative end of that is the intent to defend yourself. And if you find yourself at this end with the intent to defend yourself, flip that switch to come over to the intent to be curious and learn about your partner, your negotiating partner, your communicating partner, because that's exactly what you were doing when you were on those customer service calls. Instead of being defensive, like there's nothing wrong with our product, nothing wrong with our service,
Right.
why are you wasting my time talking? It was, no, let me be curious about what's going on for you. Let me give you opportunity to tell me about that so that I could learn something. And many people in a conflict situation are so stressed and so anxious about bringing it up that that anxiety produces them just blowing the whole thing up.
And you alluded to, and or maybe even directly said, really taking stock in yourself first can give you that ability to flip that switch. So if I find myself being triggered and I have the skill to say, what am I feeling? I'm feeling anger. I'm feeling sad. I'm feeling scared. I'm feeling, attacked, whatever it is. Honoring that and say, okay, given that I'm feeling this, what do I need for myself? And is there a choice? Do I need to come back to this conversation? Can I just take a deep breath and feel like, oh, I'm here to just listen. I can do that. Never mind what I'm getting triggered about. Let's turn the volume down on that. We'll come back to that. Or maybe you need to process it right then and there. I think this is the art and the science of it. It's honoring your emotions in it and choosing what to do as a response instead of a automatic reaction. Right.
Yeah. And it's then because we're fearful about conflict generally, it becomes reactive. And exactly right what you said. I agree fully that when you get the skills, the ability to give a personal weather report, then and practice giving it to yourself repeatedly. Right now, right now, right now, what would I answer to those 4 questions? Then when you do have an issue that comes up, you have that skill.
And the example you gave wasn't even in response to maybe a conflict. It's actually could avoid conflicts. If you're in touch with what you think you need, you feel, and you want, then it's like you could say it to preempt a conflict instead of getting into a situation where you're like, oh my gosh, I'm being this and I don't need this. I'm receiving this and I didn't ever want that. So I love that. That's to me the best way to avoid conflict is to be fully connected to yourself, what you need, and be willing to express it.
Yes, and as proactively as possible, as you just mentioned, because if you get into the practice, like I was saying, I do with my clients, of checking in with yourself all the time, and then you realize, wow, I didn't feel good at all with that last conversation with so and so. What was going on with me? And then I can go and say, that didn't work for me because I was feeling, thinking, needing, and wanting this. The other person, oh, well, great. I didn't know that about you. And there's that moment of actually deepening the relationship.
Oh, I like that. That didn't work for me because weather report. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
This is a way to go back and be proactive after the fact. Because a lot of people are like, God darn, I should have said this. I could have given my weather report. Don't beat yourself up. I love the idea of even practicing in your mind or going back after the fact. It's all a process. If we embrace it as something we're learning, like a curious kid, like, I wonder how I could do that better. I wonder how I could have said that differently. Um, the learner questions internally really help you. It's the I wonder how. What else could I have done without the judgment? Like, oh, I didn't do it right, and I'm never going to be able to do this. That you see, those are the judger questions, and that puts the brakes on the brain. So I'm all about what the hypnosis work I do is putting the gas on the brain, not the brakes on the brain, and our emotions.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Now. So having this weather report, having this awareness is the ease brings the ease. Is there anything else that brings ease into resolving conflict in your opinion?
Sure. Well, I'll just speak of one other thing that we mentioned already. If you have done work within yourself to know that you deserve to breathe and take up space on this earth, and that you feel like you are definitely whole and maybe not completely whole. I don't know that any of us are, but that we do have something to say and we're allowed to say it, giving yourself permission to say it and then having a way to say it by using the personal weather report. I use the personal weather report in my work with small businesses and corporations and couples and people having a problem with their mother. It works everywhere because it comes from your awareness of yourself. So you're not anxious anymore. You're taking the sting and the concern and anxiety out of bringing up an issue, because you're not going to bring it up and lay it at someone else's door. You're going to bring it up and say, here, let me be transparent about what's going on with me.
And here's the thing about that is that it's all about taking responsibility for what you want in your life.
Yeah, it isn't everything, you know?
Well, I think so much of our lives where we get us in trouble is when we don't.
I absolutely agree with you. And that goes back to feeling like you are a worthwhile human being. You know, I've mentioned before that I do this webinar series on reclaiming the 7 rights that you have in your life. And one of them is the right to actually be here. And another is the right to feel. Another is the right to act. Another, the right to speak. Those things are programmed into us when we're little, whether or not we get those rights. And what's important is to be able to go back when you're an adult and say, let me check. Do I really have those rights in my life, and are they showing up? And if I have the right to speak, then let me do it in a way that allows there to be conversation instead of confrontation.
So there's one thing to know this intellectually, and it's another thing to get it in your gut viscerally.
Yeah.
So one of the things I want to do is inspire everyone. And how do you get there? And this is kind of the hypnotic work, and it's really reprogramming yourself. So if you take a deep breath in and you have the premise that this is a loving universe, you are 100% perfectly, you are lovable, you are so very lovable, exactly as you are. Even if all the little voices in your head tell you why you're not, but if you take a deep breath and say that I am 100% lovable, and then you have to prove it to yourself. And here's how you prove it to yourself. You look around and you see something cool, something magnificent, something beautiful. And the fact that you can see something good in your life is a reflection. Like, wow, this is in my life. You can connect the dots of how awesome something is and how awesome and magnificent you are in your brain. You must begin to get how precious you are. One little baby step at a time, even if it's giving yourself a little acknowledgement. You got up today. You looked at yourself in the mirror for 5 seconds. You put on clothes and took a shower. It's all who you are. And it's all perfect. And one of my most favorite cards from the Feminine Power card deck is something that eventually came to me out of doing little practices like acknowledging myself for little things, is perfect isn't what you try to be. Perfect is who you already are. So the practice, besides the breathing and looking for things that are great around you and acknowledging yourself, you can take it just one step deeper. On the back of the card, we have a practice that I'm going to read. Choose an imperfection that you have, and write a thank you note to yourself about the gift that you're willing to receive from this imperfection. What, by having this part of you that you may have judged or don't like, what have you gained actually? What is it here to give you on the positive? You start nurturing yourself like your idea of your mother, the best mother that you could possibly have. Be your own best mother. Watch your life transform, because the weather report becomes very easy to do.
Another piece that I would just put in different words, because what you said is absolutely wonderful, is that when anything happens, whether it's about you or about somebody else, instead of immediately going to that negative place, the ain't it awful, she done me wrong, the world sucks, instead of running over there, try to insert very quickly this question: for what might this be good? right? I wrote a song about it
I
because it's
love
so
that.
important.
Sing it.
Like, no, for what might this be good? It's too long. But to ask yourself that question, insert that in that place where you're just about to go negative and say, no, there must be, or what might this be good? You know, whether you're sitting waiting for somebody who isn't coming to lunch and you're beginning to go down the how dare you waste my times, ask yourself, for what might this be good? Where am I? Who's here? What kind of beautiful lunch am I going to have? Now I have free time. Perhaps I could do something. You've changed the quality of your day by focusing on, for what might this be good?
I love that question. Oh, I mean, it takes judgment out of everything. It puts trust back into your life, for your life. Oh, what a great, great way to kind of let people be with this as we close today's session. And I know next time we're back, and it's actually going to be the Rhoberta Shaler show, talking about negotiation. So now that we know how to give a personal weather report, how do we negotiate anything? We're going to do that in 2 parts.
Yes, and what I'm really excited to contribute is that I teach negotiation at the University of Texas at Dallas in the MBA program. And we negotiate all day, every excuse me, and we have to know what we're about. So whether you're thinking, oh, well, I don't negotiate, yes, you do. You negotiate with yourself and with somebody else all day long. So,
And sometimes you compromise and you give up the negotiation aspect, and maybe you don't have to
well,
if you see it in a new way.
and maybe a compromise is a negotiated settlement, you know.
Yeah.
But we need to talk about those things because some people are afraid to negotiate. Yeah.
Yeah. And again, it's an art and a science, isn't it?
It sure is. Yeah. So
All right, everyone.
this has been really, really a good opening to conflict. And we didn't see any questions today, but you know, always remember that on our blab, you can ask questions. So come with a question once you know the topic, and be sure to subscribe so that you will know the upcoming topics and you'll get an email ahead of time. And that will help you prepare your questions.
And we will see you next time. Thanks for
Indeed.
being here.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.